Hey everyone, this week's topic is conflict and peacemaking. First thing we're going to start with is what is the definition of conflict? And conflict can literally be an incompatibility of goals. So this is where we experience, small conflicts, such as I want pizza for lunch, you want pasta, or we can talk about larger conflicts, such as conflicts that people have in interpersonal relationships. We can talk about interpersonal conflict. We can talk about international conflict. We can talk about conflict within the United States, and we've seen lots of examples of that within 2020 for sure. And then peace, on the other hand, is where we experience low levels of conflict. Now, I don't think that we'll ever have a world where there's absolutely zero conflict, because like I said, conflict can be as small as who's going to use the bathroom first in the morning. So what we try to do, though, is decrease the amount of conflict to the point where it is not impacting a large number of people. And so the less conflict that we have, the more we can say that we are experiencing peace. So what are some of the causes of conflict? One is what we call sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. It happens sometimes. Pandemic brain, right? So if we are experiencing competition for scarce resources, remember at the beginning of the pandemic when everyone was hoarding toilet paper and there was conflict between people because people were hoarding toilet paper. It was a scarce resource, or so they thought at the time. So that can be one cause of conflict. Another cause of conflict is a perceived injustice. If I feel that something has been done to me that's wrong, and I look around and I see that it hasn't happened to other people, then I perceive that injustice has been done to me, and that so this is something it's, as my kids say, it's not fair, and not fair can cause conflict as well. When we are in conflict with, say, another person, we may experience what we call mirror image perceptions, where we misattribute the other person's behaviors or their reasons for their behaviors. So again, we use that attribution theory that we talked about to say that you did this because you're a mean person, and so that causes conflict. Whereas if I stopped and thought about it and I thought, well, maybe they were having a bad day or something like that. So misattribution can influence the development of conflict as well. And when people are in conflict, we experience these mirror image perceptions where I think that I'm right and you're wrong, and because you're wrong, you're a bad person. And then the person that I'm in conflict with thinks they're right and that I'm wrong and that I'm a bad person because of XYZ. So that's what we call mirror image perceptions. So we have an image of each other that is the same for the other person, but for us, we are both good people. So one of the ways that we try to decrease conflict is through regulation. We make laws, we make rules, we tell people that they can't bring guns into bars because we know that alcohol may increase aggression and that having a weapon available may increase conflict. So that's one of the ways that we try to reduce conflict. Another way that we try to reduce conflict is through contact. So many times groups that are in conflict don't have contact with each other. They don't interact with each other. Sorry. Dogs, cats. This is what happens when you record at home, right? That was conflict over a shared resource, apparently. Food. So we experience that when groups are in conflict, many times they don't have contact with each other and they don't communicate with each other. So increasing that contact and increasing that communication can decrease conflict. I've recorded this video 7 times, so I'm thinking, like, should I stop? Should I pause? Should I try again? So many groups that are in conflict start off by trying to, if they're communicating, which is important, they start off by trying to bargain with each other, by saying, if I give you this, will you give me this? And bargaining sometimes can help, but if bargaining doesn't help, then we may have to move on to mediation, where a third party comes in and says, this is how you need to, how can I help you? And kind of works between the two people or the two groups to try to decrease the conflict. And one of the things that we realize with mediation many times is that we experience those mirror image perceptions, and that once we decrease those, then we decrease the problem. Sometimes, though, a conflict is so large that we have to bring in someone from the outside to do what we call arbitration, which is basically where a third party comes in and says, this is the problem, you need to do this, you need to do that. And if you don't follow these, then, this other person can sue you. So that's an arbiter is basically coming in to tell you, this is what you're going to do, and if you don't do it, we're going to have a problem. So at that point, you have lost the ability to make decisions about your conflict because you've refused to participate so far. We can also talk about the idea of using GRIT, which is graduated reciprocal initiatives and tension reduction. I was like, initiatives? I think it's initiatives. So this is basically where, to decrease conflict, one person offers something. And if the other person accepts it and offers something back, then we do this graduated increase in reciprocal interaction. Okay? And so you may have seen this with groups of friends who are in conflict, that one person will just text the other person and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. And so if the other person texts them back and says, I miss talking to you, then that's this graduated initiatives and tension reduction, right? Whereas if the second person ignores it, the first person can try again. And so GRIT strategy suggests that you continue to try at least 3 times, and if all of your initiatives are rebuffed or ignored, then come back to it later, try again. But with the goal of decreasing conflict through giving small things. If you've ever seen the movie Wedding Crashers, at the beginning of the movie, there is a scene where they're trying to mediate a divorce agreement. And it's very acrimonious, very negative energy going on in this room until she goes to take some medication, and the husband says, can you give her a glass of water, please, so she can take that? And so she takes her medicine, and then she says, you can have the miles that they were fighting over. And then it's almost as if that small thing of can you give her some water so she can take her medication, was just this initial where they started, decreasing the conflict that they were experiencing. Okay, so Northwest Vista has a program in peace and conflict studies, if that's something that you're interested in. So if you are, send me an email. I can send you more information about that. Obviously, peace and conflict is much larger than an 8-minute video, but I did want to give you some information to start you off. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.